Welcome to University, a podcast for young people navigating life's big transitions. I'm Anne-Marie Cheresso, your host. On University, you'll hear stories from college students, you'll get tips from experts, and occasionally you'll hear from a parent's perspective on how to manage this time of change in your life consciously. Find yourself, find your purpose, find your people, and pursue you fearlessly. On this week's episode, I talk with Yale sophomore Mat Ferraro. We talk about how to go about finding the right fit college. He shares a little piece of advice for anyone going through the process now. And we chat about FOMO, learning balance once you actually get to college. And we talk about being in a long-distance relationship in college, the pros and the cons, and how to really decide if it's the right thing for you. So today, I'd like you to meet Matthew. I've had the pleasure of knowing Matthew since he was 2, actually, or even just a little bit younger. And I spoke with him a while back, so you'll be popping into the middle of our conversation, exploring all of the above and a whole lot more. Have a listen and let me know what you think on the other side. Yeah, and not all kids in high school know exactly what they want and where they want to go, but you were one of those who, like, you knew music was important to you, you knew you loved English, you had sort of some focus and goals, and I imagine that made it a little bit easier to narrow down your school choice.
I think it did. I was also looking for a school close to a big city. So that made it a lot easier, actually, because I sort of cut out a lot of places that were in the middle of nowhere. I really wanted to be close to New York, specifically. And then music, English, close to New York, it gets pretty tight selection.
Keeps narrowing.
Yeah.
And then getting into Yale is no small feat.
I was really happy that it worked out. Yeah, it was an awesome experience.
Yeah, and you worked really hard to get there. So I just want to honor that, because I know being in high school and balancing, academics and music, because you invested a lot of time and love and energy in music, which, by the way, I've known you since you're 18 months old. You have been passionate about music since then. So you were really focused and balanced, and you kept it all in perspective, and dating and being social and all of that. So kudos.
And also surviving the nightmare of the college process.
Right? It's a total nightmare.
But I'm glad that's in the rearview mirror, because that was not enjoyable, I don't think, for anybody.
I'm pretty much, there's no one I'm talking to that loves that process.
No. No.
So, well, okay, as we're speaking about the process, there's going to be lots of people listening in who are in the application process. And what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who is going through the process now?
First of all, I would stress thinking early-ish on, maybe early of junior year, trying to figure out what school is the best fit for you. I think that's the most important piece of advice that I was given, and I've seen all of my classmates go through the college process, countless other friends. Pretty much everyone I know is going through a similar, like, ACT prep, looking at all these schools, etc. And I think the best piece of advice I could give is to think about really carefully what type of place you would be most comfortable, and trying to strip away all of the other things that people talk about the college process, like, oh, you have to go to Harvard, or like, you really don't want to go to this type of school, or you wouldn't be happy at a Big Ten school or wherever. And I think that it's really important to think for yourself about where you think you would fit the best.
Yeah, listening into yourself and knowing yourself. Like you said, you knew you wanted to be near a big city.
I know that I just know that personally I wouldn't be happy not close to a big city. And that's just something that I've always thought, and that was important in the college process for me. And I think that a lot of people have those types of things where they know they would or wouldn't be happy in a certain type of environment, but for whatever reason sort of cast that aside because they think, oh, I would never get into that school, or like my XYZ wouldn't work, or whatever. And there's a lot of other outside pressures that people factor into the college process, which I think is ultimately pretty harmful.
Yeah, I think not knowing yourself is the most harmful piece. And the trick is we don't all know ourselves when we're 16, 17 years old and we're having to make these decisions. We're still getting to know ourselves. So
Yeah.
you were lucky that you really knew that about yourself. And I think that's a great piece of advice.
And then maybe one other small one that I'm just thinking about that was really helpful is talking to students at the school. That's people don't really think about just reaching out to kids that they've known that have gone to these places. But that's really helpful is talking to or even visiting people that have gone to these schools and just getting their take on the positives and the negatives. I think it's important to ask people what they don't like as well. So you just get a really accurate picture of what each school is like, and then that can inform you to make a better decision.
That's a really good piece of advice. Okay, so what don't you like about Yale?
My biggest criticism of Yale is that there's just too many things to do. And everyone does a million things because most of the people who were there in high school did a bunch of activities, were the president of whatever, and were in 8 clubs and did a million things during the summer and just totally overloaded themselves. And that seems to be like a common theme. I know I did it, particularly my second semester. I mean, I was just sleeping like 4 hours a night and working and doing all these activities and in all these clubs, and it was just too much. So I think that Yale as a place is a lot of the people there are like that.
Is it a little bit of like an overachieving mindset, or is it a little bit of like gluttony mindset?
I think overachieving plus the fact that people want to make the most of the school, but that doesn't necessarily mean doing everything, I think, is what I've thought about after I finished my year. So I realized that second semester I did just too much, and there were times when I was not happy. Not many, I mean, just like once in a while, but times where I felt just overloaded. And to get the most out of the place doesn't necessarily mean doing every single activity or taking every single hardest class or going to every single party. I mean, it's all about a balance of these different elements. I think is really important to remember.
Yeah, this is a conversation I'm having a lot with you guys. It's the one about balance. And this piece that you're talking about, you know, I think you're right. You have 4 years, you have this limited amount of time to be there. And I imagine it's like this giant buffet, you know, and you want to try everything. You want to like have a taste of it all. And I don't think that's too different from life, even when you get out of school, because you get out of school.
That's a good point.
And you move into the real world, and there's like life has a plethora of choices, and we do have to discern and decide which are the ones we're going to choose and which are the ones we're going to do. So great practice. So I know that you had a heavy academic load. How was the social stuff and the being away from home? Everyone's reporting that freshman year, no matter how much they've traveled or gone to camp or been away, there's like a different feeling to it. So what was that like for you?
So the only night that I really felt homesick or any variation of that was the actual first night of school. Because I for some reason I expected to feel it, but it felt, I was really happy pretty much all the first semester, which was, I feel like talking to a lot of friends, not really that common. I was just happy to sort of be away from home, frankly. And I think just hanging out by myself I'm all right doing that. I'm an only child, so I'm totally cool just hanging out, playing my guitar, or doing whatever I like to do. And you don't have to always be running around meeting every single person. And I think that's, especially like the first few weeks, everyone is trying to like make their best friends for life. And like race around, and like I have to meet as many people as possible. I have to go to every party. because if I don't, then I'll be like caught behind, or I won't meet the people, or I'll get left in the dust. And I think that it's important to push yourself to be social, but also remember that if you don't go out one night, it's not like really the end of the world. I mean, I don't think there needs to be a pressure to like be meeting absolutely everyone.
So tell our listeners what you think your biggest challenge freshman year was.
My biggest challenge was probably once classes started for maybe about a month and a half, just getting once like the initial euphoria of like orientation week where there's really nothing to do and you're just running around and like hanging out with your buddies that you've made and going to parties or whatever. I think it's sort of once you're settled into college, balancing everything. I mean, academics, the stuff that you have to do. For me, my music, I joined some clubs early on. And then also I'm in a long distance relationship at school, which was like obviously a new experience for both of us.
So talk a little bit about that, because you guys dated like through a lot of high school.
Yeah, we dated through most of high school. So we started dating right at the beginning of the year of sophomore year. It's like January 1st, basically.
Yeah.
And dated all the way through high school and into college. She goes to school in Philly, so it's about 3 hours away by train, which isn't too bad. But it was really delicate because we both wanted to experience the schools that we were at. Yeah. So it was this sort of weird at first balance of how much do we see each other, how much do we talk, because we don't want to just sort of lean on our relationship so much that it like gets stressed, or that we're not immersed in our schools and sort of miss that. So it was like the first month and a half, actually the first kind of semester was pretty tough just to really hone in on what balance worked for us.
Well, what made you guys decide to stay together? Well, first of all, did you get pressure or talk about, we should break up before college?
We talked about it a fair amount, like mostly at the second half of senior year as it was approaching. Mm-hmm. And it approaches really fast.
I know.
Just high school kind of goes by. But we also, most people, I would say, break up. Most high school couples that we observed broke up before going to college just because people want to switch it up.
Yeah.
I can only really speak for myself and not her, although I'm pretty sure that we're on the same wavelength. But we both just really wanted to stay together.
Yeah, you were devoted.
We thought that was the best call. So we did like some form of an open relationship for first semester, which was it was pretty challenging just because it was something that we hadn't done before. And it was tough for me, at least, going from a really serious, committed relationship to something less serious with the same person.
Yeah, that would totally freak me out.
Yeah, it was a bad decision. I don't know, it happens. Everyone makes mistakes. I thought it was, in retrospect, just not a great call.
Well, I mean, I really don't deal in mistakes. I deal in, learned opportunities. So, what I like is you guys were so willing to experiment, like open. You were open to possibilities. Like, let's just try it out. Let's see what happens. Let's not close any doors. And I think that takes a lot of courage, because that's, like you said, a pretty big deal to go from having this exclusive relationship of 3 years almost to then saying, okay, let's have an open relationship. That would freak me out. I think it would freak most people out. Yeah,
I think it was mostly because we both just wanted to experience all of college and didn't want any limitations, regardless of whether we actually did experiment in those areas. We just wanted to feel like we had the opportunity to really do anything that like a college kid would do their first year.
So some freedom, just freedom.
Yeah, and I think like from maybe that perspective, it was helpful just because I recognized that I was not happy in that type of situation. So we sort of like self-corrected and talked, and then ended up just getting back together and dating exclusively, like maybe March of this year. So
you gave it a fair amount of time.
yeah, we gave it enough time. There are like some rough patches, as any relationship has,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that it ultimately ended up well, and I think that was a good. I'm glad that we did it, because it allowed us, I think, both to realize that that's something that we didn't want to do. So, I mean, had we just stayed together exclusively, I think there always would have been that question of, should we have done something like that, or should we have broken up, or what would have happened if? And I think it's nice that there isn't really that large question hanging over our relationship.
Yeah, and one of the most beautiful things I'm hearing from what you're saying is that you guys first of all, like, there's got to be a tremendous amount of trust involved. And you did give each other the freedom to go and explore, knowing that you really cared about each other and loved each other and had this deep commitment to each other, but you were really more invested in what was best for each of you as individuals. And I don't know that most adults know how to do that.
Yeah.
That's like a huge thing to do at this time in your life. So I really want to appreciate you guys, both of you, for doing this. It's pretty courageous. It was a courageous thing to do, because you were both risking a lot, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. And I think we then also, it gave us a reference point to then have the conversation sort of after the experiment had run its course, about the fact that we can both be in our environments fully and also have this relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really valuable insight to know and feel comfortable with what we're doing. Because I felt like my second semester at school, I was completely involved, almost too involved in the campus. I mean, I was in a bunch of clubs. I ended up rushing and joining a fraternity. I had my classes, all my friends, some concerts and bands that I was in and stuff like that. But I also had this relationship, and I felt like we really dialed in what worked for us. I mean, she also has her own like mirrored version of what I have at school where she is too.
Yeah. And so how did you guys fit in time for one another then, with all of that other stuff going on? Because I would imagine you having all that stuff you have going on, she having all her stuff going on, and that their free time doesn't necessarily overlap.
Yeah, so we talked probably once or maybe twice or three times every week, I would say. Like at night usually, once everything had kind of cooled down. Traded messages throughout the day, but I think that I didn't really feel like we needed to be talking all the time, like the way it was in high school, where we'd see each other every single day for 6 hours and then would spend like mostly all of the weekend together hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a different type of feel, but I don't think it's any less like committed than it was then. So it's just about sort of shifting how a relationship feels without losing like seriousness or commitment. I think it's definitely doable. It just takes some time to like dial in what exactly works.
Yikes. You are so healthy. I don't even know what to say about all this. No, it's big stuff. It's like serious stuff. Most of the time at this stage in our lives, we're like worried about what the other person's doing, or, feeling vulnerable or insecure, or are they being loyal, or what are they out doing, or do I have to talk to you every day? And, it's amazing that you guys figured all this out.
I definitely felt more uncomfortable like that during the open part, just because it was weird to like close off a part of my life to her.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that I hadn't done before, or
Yeah.
had obviously. So it's just a different I felt that personally it was hard to still be as close as we were without like having that part, like having that commitment in a romantic sense.
Yeah, and did you guys get to see each other ever?
So we visited each other once. I visited her once and she visited me once first semester. And then second semester, I visited her. I think that was I think like once or twice a semester is definitely a good amount. I don't think it needs to be like the really calculated thing. One of my friends at school actually is also in a long distance relationship, and he visits her like every other week. And so they sort of switch off. So like they see each other every other weekend, but either she'll come or he'll go to her. And I mean, for me in my relationship, I feel like that calculated of a schedule just doesn't seem necessary.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
I also would feel unhappy like leaving school that much.
Yeah, that's great.
Missing 1/4 of the weekends. I mean, that would just be kind of a bummer.
Yeah, this is such a limited time, and the relationship is like a long-term living thing, and your time in school is a short period of time. You want to make the most of it, I hear you saying.
Yeah, and I think it's important to not to hit too hard on the word balance, but I think that it's like just trying to figure out what feels the best for you, and also recognizing that, I mean, I'm at Yale. That's an incredible opportunity in so many ways that I would feel like I'd be wasting the opportunity if I was gone all the time and was always FaceTiming her and doing all of these things.
Yeah.
So it's just different it's just very different than it was in high school. But I think we've sort of, by nearing the end of the year, figured out what worked. Yeah, and then sometimes it takes a few tries to get the right thing, which is totally all right.
Well, that was Matthew. What did you think of that? Can you even imagine having an open relationship with your long-term significant other in college? Matthew was facing some pretty tough decisions around his relationship that I imagine were pretty challenging to make. And so many students I've been talking with have no idea what they want to do when they go to college, and they get all wrapped up in their fears around believing they think they should know. This whole what I want to do with my life thing can be really, really stressful. In Matthew's case, he had clarity, yet he still found the college application process a little bit of a nightmare. So I really appreciated his advice. Strip away other people's opinions and figure out what is the best fit for you. Know what makes you happy. Remember last week's episode 17 when Adam and I explored our full body yes? It seems to me that Matthew's really been practicing listening and tuning into himself pretty well. All these decisions that we all face as we go through this process, and the college application process can be really hard to make, but when we practice listening in and we take some risks and we pay attention to what we truly want, I think we have a much better chance at being happy and finding authentic success in our relationships, in school, really everywhere in life. And remembering that sometimes it takes a few tries to figure it out. It takes a lot of courage to take risks, and in the end, I imagine it's really worth it. So maybe this week, take one small risk in your life. Try something new, experiment, or do something differently and see what it feels like. And of course, I'd love to hear how it goes. Thanks for listening to University. If you like what you heard, I would be absolutely thrilled for you to share with a friend, and equally grateful for you to rate and review on iTunes. It really helps. You can find more information and stay in touch over at university.u on Instagram or at University on Facebook and Twitter. I really hope to see you there. If you'd like support navigating the chaos and you're ready to create a more fulfilling life, I offer live weekly group coaching sessions every Thursday from 4 to 5 Central Time. It's a place to gather together, be seen and heard, reduce your stress, learn how to take back control of your life again. Give the first week a try for free and check it out. You can find out more at the link below or ping me on Facebook and Instagram for more.